All right. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started here. Mario has already taken advantage of the Q&A, but if you do have questions that come up while we're talking, please go ahead and let us know. The more interaction, the better. I'm going to go ahead and introduce my guest if you don't know. So Kelly King is the former owner of Mountain Hot Tub, which I think now has 6 locations in Montana. Kelly started in the hot tub industry in 1989, right? Is that right? 89?
Yep.
All right. He worked for dealers in Idaho and Colorado, but always wanted to work at Mountain Hot Tub. So in 1995, he got his wish, and then in 2014, Kelly and Shirley, his wife, bought the business from Tom Walker, and just 9 years later, sold it to Rocky Mountain Hot Tub Holdings as well as a few key employees. Did I get all those? Did I get all those highlights right?
Keep rolling. You're making my
All
job
right.
really easy.
All right, yeah, there you go. I get a little bit of the high level background. Um, but give us a little bit. I mean, let's go a little bit deeper into your background in the hot tub industry. I mean, you kind of had been around the block a little bit, had always had your eye on Mountain Hot Tub. Why was that? What was it that was so attractive to you about Mountain Hot Tub?
Great question. I started off in the service end of things, um, fixing and delivering hot tubs. And I remember going to a class somewhere along the line, and some guys in the class were talking about they just got a new truck, that their boss had just bought them a new truck, and it had a cassette player and air conditioning.
Ooh, ooh,
And that was a pretty big deal, that
that
their
was
boss thought enough of them to buy air conditioning in the truck. And it's like, I want to work for a company like that.
right.
But that really was a conversation back then. And the more I heard about how Mountain Hot Tub took care of their employees, um, the more interested I was in being part of that team.
Yeah,
And it turned out to be all of that. It was
yeah.
a great move.
So when you finally ended up there, I mean, when you initially started at Mountain, were you thinking, one day I'm going to own this business, or did that come over time?
Well, when I moved here to work, when I moved to Montana to work for Mountain Hot Tub, the position I was hoping to take was a sales position, and that didn't come through. Uh, the lady that was going to leave decided not to leave, so they said, "Sorry, we don't have a position." So I just did whatever I could to justify a paycheck. I was doing the service work way out of town. I was relieving people that needed days off. I would load up a trailer with a tent and a bunch of hot tubs and go to a small town and set up a tent sale and just do as much of that on my own as I could until, something opened up that was, a little more permanent. But I really had to create and justify my own position
Yeah.
just to get my foot in the door with them, and start at the literally below the bottom, and then work my way up. And when they offered me a management job at the store in Helena, this is 1997, I remember talking to Tom and Scott and saying, I'm going to move my family again. And I would just like you to know that down the road, I would like an opportunity to be more than just a manager. I would like to have, some skin in the game. And they always thought that was great. And I was always promised that if I stuck in the game, they'd take care of me. It was never clear what that meant. But, when it came time, um, Tom did exactly what he said he was going to do. And, it was a great ride.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that hasn't been that long ago that you bought Mountain Hot Tub. So I have to say I was a little surprised when I heard that you had sold it, because I was like, man, I feel like we just talked about you buying this business, and now
That's
you're
right.
and now you're already selling it. So, I
Yeah.
mean, why was this the right time for you to sell your business?
A lot of things lined up. The
Okay.
first thing that lined up was when Shirley and I bought the business in January 2014, the SBA loan that we got was a 10-year loan.
Okay.
And I was turning 50. So in 10 years, I'd be 60. And we thought that would be great to have the option at 10 years on selling the business and moving on.
Yeah.
And it was just something that we talked about. We never really did anything proactively to get there in 10 years, other than just run the business the best we could. And then COVID happened and we got really busy and the company grew a lot and it became a really big business to run. And we had to hire really smart people that knew things that I didn't know. And for the company to continue to grow, it was going to take somebody with a little more horsepower and a little more vision than where I was at. And there was an opportunity to sell to somebody with integrity and to have them let key people buy the business. And a lot of things lined up with this particular deal that made it really attractive. And well, we also talked about the age part of it. Was we like to travel, and we would go on these excursions and they would have horseback riding or a bicycle ride or a walk or a hike, or you could be a gentle walker and they'd put you on a van and bus you over somewhere to just drink wine. And we would watch these gentle walkers coming off these boats and they're got their canes and they're hobbling along. It's like, I don't want to wait to be a gentle walker to go out and enjoy the world.
So go
So,
see and do now while you can.
yep. And so I feel like I've got a little left in me and we want to get out there and do this. And at the same time, the company really needed somebody else to have a vision for what the next 10 years looks like. I think that Shirley and I did a really good job. We're really proud of what we did with our company and what the company became. But to go to the next level, it really was going to take somebody else.
Yeah.
And it was time to get out of the way and let that happen. I think it was more fair to the employees to have somebody come in with a new energy, a new vision. And it's proved that it was right. What's happened to the company since I left makes me very proud of what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, they've opened, I think, 2 new locations, maybe even 3, 2 for sure, since the new owners took over. So they're definitely in a growth mode, it seems like. But you bring up a really good point. Like so many businesses in our industry grew exponentially during the pandemic, and you went from being, small or medium-sized businesses to medium or large businesses. And that comes with a lot of other, excuse me, a lot of other stuff from a management perspective that, you probably haven't had to deal with before, like, HR policies and things like that, yeah, sometimes a lot of people in our industry don't have a lot of experience with, maybe don't want to have experience with, and it's just a different animal than what a lot of people started with or what they thought they bargained for when they took on these businesses to a certain extent. You want to grow, but then you do get it to a point where that growth is, maybe beyond what you want or are capable or willing to manage.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that was true in our case. We grew when I bought it from Tom, it was 15 of my buddies, for employees. And I thought, I can handle this. This will be fun.
Yeah.
And when we came out of, 2021 with over 70 employees and not just HR issues, we had to have an HR specialist and we have to have specialists for that. And it just got to be a different kind of company to run. And it was no longer a little mom and pop, hot tub store. And I could just run out and do, whatever I felt like doing. It became a real company and a lot of responsibility. And I enjoyed it. Again, I was, very proud of what we had built. But to go farther than that, man, it was just, there was an opportunity for, something really cool to happen to the company. And it wasn't going to be with me.
Yeah. So when you kind of came to this realization and you looked around at kind of all of the different ways that you could sell your businesses and all of the different avenues, why did you land on, let's find someone kind of outside the business to come in and buy it?
Well, I'll start with how we started the process, to find a buyer in the first place. And that was hiring an M&A firm to do a proper valuation on our business.
Sure.
And it wasn't a drive-by market analysis. It was, it was an in-depth, we had to pay for it. It was several $1,000s, you have to pay for it to get a good result. So we went through the process of having the company evaluated so that we could make decisions. At that time, we weren't thinking that we were going to sell the business right away. We just wanted information to know where to go next. So we hired Compass Advisors to do the valuation for us. And in that process, as an M&A company in Montana, they actually connected us to the folks that bought us. They actually, it's serendipitous. They had actually shown interest in buying Mountain Hot Tub to them quite a while ago. So we didn't jump right on that. We shopped it around. We went through the process. Once we made up our mind that we would actually entertain getting offers on the business, we did go through the process of having them shop our financial pack, or our package around to see if they could get any interest. Timing wise, this would have been in, we started this in February of 2022 when we got the valuation done. We remember, and we were just coming out of just the absolute high water mark.
Right.
But then things started tapering off. And so finding a buyer as the spa industry was starting to slide down, we thought that might be harder and harder to find somebody outside of the industry that would be interested in buying a hot tub store when the industry seemed to be backsliding without, knowing where that was going to end. So I felt like our options were maybe slipping away, and we would have to make up our mind to stay in the business for another 5 years or so and ride it out. Or do we want to come to a deal that we could live with and get out sooner and get out now? Tim just happened to be in the right place at the right time. The person that ended up writing the deal for us. And there were opportunities for our company to grow as well. And again, I wasn't the guy that was going to have that happen. So to be fair to the company, me getting out of the way, having somebody else step in with the horsepower that could take it to another level, just started making a lot more sense. Shirley and I's timing on wanting to get on with our lives and travel and do the things that we wanted to do without the hindrance of being worried about work and employees and payroll and customers and all of that. It started to look really attractive to us. So Tim was in his group. They were everybody was just in the right place at the right time. And then the icing on the cake was how we structured the deal so that the key employees that we wanted to have participate in this as well, to be owners, made this type of a deal really attractive to me. I was not a good candidate for an ESOP. Structurally, we were, but I was not of the mindset to stay in it for another 5 years or 10 years or whatever that would be. We had made up our mind that it was time to just let go and get out of the way of the business and let the business thrive in a different way than what we were doing.
So, it's interesting you talk about, Tim being in the right place at the right time and you guys kind of being in the right place at the right time. And it's interesting, the more people that I talk to about this, people who have sold their business, bought a business, that kind of seems to be what happens. But it's not like this like magic that just, suddenly everybody wants to buy or sell a business and it worked out perfect. Things kind of fall into place, but everyone's already done some legwork to get there, right? So, you had already done this valuation process. You'd kind of already started that. You'd, structured your business and thought about what you wanted it to look like, what you needed if you're going to sell the business. And so it's interesting because it's like, the things kind of seem to fall into place where they need to, but there's also a lot of legwork that happens before you even get to that point, it doesn't just knock on your door when you're not expecting it. Like things are kind of already happening and you're already preparing in a way for this, even if you're not totally ready.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, the takeaway is if people are listening to this,
They are, trust me, there are
yeah,
people
so
listening.
they have some interest in what's going to happen to their company, either looking to buy one or looking to sell theirs or an exit strategy for their own, and is this a good fit? So what I would say to them is you have to take a step in that direction.
Right.
You can sit and worry all day long about all the what ifs, but the only way to really find out is to take the step. And then what I would add to that is you don't have to be afraid, because you always, you don't have to accept any deal, until it's time to sign on the dotted line. But get the information, take the step, and get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
That's what I see as being the difference between the people in our friendship group that have actually moved on, is they've taken that first step.
Yeah.
Whatever, and for us, that was getting the valuation done, and that launched a huge project of getting information put together and getting our books in order. Even though, we were squeaky clean, there were still a lot of things that we had to do to get things in order to make our company marketable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. A piece of that you and I talked about, but we haven't mentioned here is figuring out what you need for the next stage of your life and what that looks like as well. I think sometimes it's smart to even start there as opposed to trying to figure out, well, how much is my business worth? Well, how much do I actually need when when I'm going to sell the business, and how do I make my business attractive? How do we grow our revenue, or, do whatever I need to do in my own personal finances for that to be attainable. I think that's a part of it too that we don't always talk about is sometimes you need to start there. And instead of starting with, well, what is it worth? Like, well, actually, what do I need from it?
I think that's extremely important, because what happens is, you get a valuation, you get a number that somebody says they think your company could sell for. If that's realistic or not, time will tell when somebody actually makes an offer. So you have to know what your number is, and hopefully the offer that comes in is higher than your number. It may be lower than your valuation. But that's an exercise that you and your family have to go through to even understand what your deal is going to be when it's time. If somebody makes an offer on your business and it's considerably higher than your number, that would be good to be in that comfortable position. But if somebody throws a number out at you and you don't know where you need to be to live the life that you want, that's pretty useless.
Yeah, absolutely. So you and Tim and, his company, you kind of met through these advisors that you were working with. But I mean, where do you think, if someone is at the point where they're ready to, market their business and see if there's interest, I mean, how would you suggest people even go about doing that?
Well, in our market, Bozeman is a town of about, a county of, between 50 and 100,000 people in the area. So we were fortunate that we had an M&A company that we actually used when I did the deal with Tom 10 years ago. It was the same guys. So I would say that in the markets that people are in, to do the research and find an M&A company that fits that fits their company's description. Some of them want to deal in medical, M&A companies want to deal in this field or in technology. And so you're going to have to find a company that's designed for the type of business, for a hot tub type of retail. And
Can I ask you something? Because I don't know. Maybe this is just a difference in terms, but is an M&A company, is that the same as a broker, or are those two different things? I don't know the answer to that.
I think that's two different things. Mergers and acquisitions,
Got it.
the M&A part of it. So yeah, you would have to Google that to see
Okay.
what.
Okay. I can do that.
Yeah, yeah, but a broker that would be, and it might be two different companies. I'm not sure. One that's going to tell you what your company is worth to do a proper valuation on it. And then the broker is the guy that's going to list it and actually market your company like a realtor would your house. They have a list of investors, perhaps, that are looking to invest in a small business in your market, and that's outside of the industry.
Right.
So that's really where we started looking too, was just people that were interested in investing in a small business in our community,
Mhm.
more than looking for somebody that wanted to buy a hot tub business.
Yeah. Yeah, I've read some articles in the last couple of years about the returns on investing in small businesses are sometimes a lot better than maybe the bigger market. And so it's kind of interesting seeing how that is kind of played out in the different investment strategies that people are looking at as far as targeting small businesses. So anyway, I mean, I don't know a ton about it myself, but I've seen a little bit of articles pop up about those kinds of people looking for things. And I think it's encouraging when you are a small business owner. I mean, sometimes you're like, well, my business is too small. No one's going to be interested in buying this. Or, I mean, I guess that's what I think about my business. But but there are people out there where it's like, no, this is what we do, and this is how we make our money, and we see the value in small businesses and growing small businesses. And so, don't get too discouraged out there, people. There are people who are interested in these things for sure.
Right. And that are outside of the hot tub,
Yes.
line of sight.
Yeah.
And that was brought up to us even when we bought the business 10 years ago, was getting their take on people that are looking to invest in small businesses as an investment, and what that was looking like to them 10 years ago, and them even saying, look, in 10 years, you guys are going to be in great shape. This is the percentage of the population that's going to have money to invest. They're going to want to invest in a small business.
Yep.
In fact, when I bought the business from Tom Walker, that uh, his advisor, on what do you do with all this, that you just got from selling your business. Now you have all these assets. What do you want to do with it? The advice they gave him: buy a small business. Now, he didn't do that, but it was just
Yeah.
ironic
Yeah.
that that's what they said
Yeah.
was a good place to do with your money, is buy a small business. So yeah, I think there is a great market out there of people looking to buy a small business in certain communities, and they don't know that it's going to be a hot tub business.
Yeah. How did you, so you talked a little bit about getting some key employees part ownership in this. How did you make that happen? And I mean, how did that kind of look as you were putting the deal together? Because that's not, I would say that's fairly unusual, right? For someone to come in from outside of the business and then be willing to give other people equity. I don't know. I don't feel like that's something that people are usually open to. They usually want the whole pie for themselves.
Well, in this case, it worked out really good for the not just the employees, and not just for Tim, but also for the company. You have people that have worked inside the company that are vested in seeing it succeed, that know the ins and outs of, all of the employees and all their quirks, and they're willing to put their own. This was, I think, one of the big differences is that they have to be able to, in this case, put up their own money. And not everybody has employees that have the ability to put up their own assets to
Yeah.
buy equity. So the way ours was put together was a necessary part of it. I think from the buyer's perspective, for not moving to Montana and without transplanting as a management team, that having people with skin in the game, that I think gave him a lot of confidence that he was buying a company that had people on the inside that were willing to put up their own to be part of the game. Gave Tim a lot of confidence in what he was buying.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I guess we should mention, so Tim owns another hot tub company in Colorado. and also now you guys. So I'm assuming he's still in Colorado then, and he's not, like you said, he did not move his family to Montana to run this business.
No, I think that was one of the attractive things of what we had was I have um, worked really hard to not have to work hard and to have employees run the business and make decisions. And so I think that's a really important part too for people that are listening is a lot of our friends in the business and people that we see take a lot of joy working in the business. And when it's time to sell, are they going to want to stay in the business and continue to work for a period of time and train their replacement?
Mhm.
And that might be part of the deal. Or do they want out on day one? And how is that buyer going to run the business without them?
Yeah.
So Shirley and I worked really hard at building a team that could run the business without us. You know, we could take off for weeks at a time and not have voicemail, not have email, not have sticky notes when I got back.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things too that I think made us really attractive to a buyer was that if I wasn't going to stick around, that they had something that was able to continue to run in my absence.
Yeah, that's the thing that they tell you to do, but I think maybe one of the hardest pieces to actually get across the finish line is getting yourself out of the day-to-day operations as much as possible. It's easier said than done, for sure. It takes a lot of work.
It does. And
And time.
there's, fear of letting others make decisions and make mistakes, or there's the joy of being in the game and, wanting to be right there and be in it. And I think that's probably more what I see is that they really truly enjoy being in the game.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So now that you have bought this business and now sold this business, um, I mean, how would you compare the two experiences? And what were kind of some of the differences? And maybe what were some of the things that you learned from buying the business that you took with you when you went to sell it, that you wanted to maybe do different or think about differently?
Um, I think in buying the business, I was really excited about getting the deal done and about the deal itself and having the business. And so in being a buyer and coming into it with like fresh energy and just being super excited about the changes that I wanted to make and where I saw that's where the excitement came from.
Mhm.
Um, and it was about getting the deal. This one, selling it, I think the excitement comes from more of um, what our future is, just the fun that we have ahead of us in our future and being done with the business and not worrying about it and being able to enjoy life and to see our friends and our family and to travel and do the things that we've been longing to do. But yeah, it's a different kind of excitement for sure. And I will say that no sadness, not missing it.
It wasn't bittersweet for you then to sell the business. It was all sweet.
Yeah, yeah, no regrets and no sadness. And yeah, it was not a bittersweet thing. We're very excited to do the deal.
Yeah.
And part of it was, I knew that the company would be taken care of and to see it grow. And I love that part.
Yeah. So just a reminder, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. And I did want to mention while we were on today, so we are doing a more in-depth succession planning workshop at the Pool Spa Patio Expo coming up in Dallas. So Ellie Hansen, who she was on some of our earlier webinars about selling to a family member, her company Regeneration is going to be there and doing that for us. So well, all the details are on the small retailer website, or you can always email me and I can make sure that you get them. But yeah, if you are going to be in Dallas, come a day early and check that out too. So lots going on around here. Um,
Cool.
Kelly, what would you say was the most challenging part of getting the deal across the finish line this time around? Like these things never go exactly as planned. Like something always comes up. Kind of what were some of
Right.
the challenges that you guys had to navigate with just like getting this thing across the finish line?
Keeping calm through,
Okay.
yeah, the curveballs that would come our way, uh, having people that we really trusted on our side, which in this case was the M&A firm that represented us, so that when something came my way, I could bounce it off of them and say, is this normal? Is this right? Or is this something I should be worried about? And um, having them tell me this is normal, this is, this, or this is the way that we're going to handle it. Uh, I think I would have lost my mind if I didn't have somebody tell me when I was confused about, what was going on, that they could put me back on course. So the hard part of the whole thing is the emotional roller coaster of um, just of the deal. Due diligence is a long process. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of questions. Um, and having somebody there telling you that this is normal and to stay in the game and everything's going to turn out okay. And having somebody that you trust has been here before and understands the game, that was invaluable.
Yeah. Did you have those kinds of advisors? I mean, obviously not an M&A firm, but did you have people who are kind of advising you and helping you along the way when you bought the business, or were you kind of figuring that out by yourself and dealing with that roller coaster alone?
Well, as it turns out, it was the same guys.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. You mentioned that. Got it.
However, we started if we go back and think about when I was thinking of buying the business
Mhm.
as an employee, um, I went out and went to the Chamber of Commerce and I think this is a national thing. They have a program called SCORE,
Yes.
and it's retired business owners that are there to give you advice on your business. And so I went to SCORE to talk to them about what it would take to buy the business I was working in. So I started this whole process. The first real advice that I got came through SCORE. And as it turns out, they told me there was no way in hell this was going to get done. But it got me thinking about what the obstacles were going to be, and they spelled out, these are the things that we see are going to be a real challenge for you. Um, but at least they spelled out and gave me a path to go down.
Mhm.
And the other one that really helped me was the SBA, was getting a banker, a loan officer that worked with the SBA program and understood it really well,
Right.
and having them on my side as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that
So
is something
really
that
quite a team.
Yeah, and that is something I've learned too, is that, when you're dealing with the SBA, it's really important to find an SBA certified person and not just someone who can get a loan from the SBA, because there are a lot of nuances that you really want someone who knows exactly what they're talking about and has that line of communication with them. Yeah, it's a really important factor when you're dealing with that. But that's interesting that you ended up kind of with the same people helping you out on both sides, the buying and the selling.
Super cool. Yeah, super cool guys.
Yeah.
It was a good relationship for sure.
I think a lot of times, when someone is buying the business as an employee, or if they're buying the business as a family member, sometimes those advisors get left out. You kind of just do more or less, not a handshake deal, there's paper signed, but a lot of those things just get worked out between the two parties. And sometimes that works out great. Um, but I've also talked to people who wished they had done a little bit more due diligence when it was all said and done, and they kind of feel like they gave the owner what they wanted instead of probably what they should have. And so I think when you are selling to someone outside of the industry, I think that becomes an obvious part of it, because they're going to want a lot more due diligence than maybe someone who knows the business really intimately. Um, but I think it's still a really important part that people need to not not that you don't trust the owner, not that you don't trust your family, but I think it's really good to get that outside perspective from people who've done a lot of these deals, and who know the ins and outs and the things that, could be a problem, um, and who can evaluate your business, without rose-colored glasses. I think that's still a really important process to go through, even though it costs you money. I think it's kind of something that you should not, um, you should do it. You should always do it, no matter what.
Yeah, it's like the difference between, selling your house on your own versus going through a really good realtor. It's you can do it on your own and figure it out, but the fees that you pay for a realtor often get you a lot more in the end. And I would sleep a lot better knowing that I was making good decisions. And it was more than just the M&A firm guys. It was also, just to give credit where credit's due, we built a team. The guys at the M&A firm, a really good business attorney, and my accountant.
Right.
And the three of them, we get them all in the room together. And, because there's all these pieces to the puzzle that no one person knows all the answers.
Yeah.
So how is this going to impact us from a tax standpoint? How is, the legality of it? And so there's there's the broker, there's a lawyer, and there's your accountant. And that, for me, having a good team, and I trust them all, that made a big difference for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, when did you bring the employees into knowing what was going on? I mean, obviously people like put up money and bought part of the business as well, but I mean, how did you deal with that part of it? Because I think sometimes too we try to, like, it's kind of under lock and key until the everything is signed on the dotted line. How did you guys deal with that?
As much as I wanted to give my entire staff a heads up that this is coming and not make them feel betrayed or feel weird about it after the fact, we waited until the paper was signed.
Yeah.
And that evening we had a meeting set up, at 6 p.m. And they took over the next morning. But it was just one of those things that's necessary to do it that way.
Yeah.
And there were a handful of employees that had to know because of information exchange, more than even just
Sure.
the key employees that bought into the business. There was bookkeeping and payroll and other things that those people had to be involved in it as well. Obviously, there's NDAs that are signed to let them know how serious it is, that they have to keep this all under wraps. But it really is the hard truth that, as much as I really liked my employees and wanted to be the guy that told them and gave them a heads up that this is coming and they would all be happy about it, we had to wait till the last minute until the deal was done to
Yeah.
say it. And it went over great.
Sure.
It was, yeah, it worked out fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to tell them that it's going to happen and then it doesn't happen. I mean, that's not great. And there's always something that could go wrong in the 11th hour.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I had to be held back, several times from wanting to say something.
Sure.
And then being reeled back into, these are the reasons why we recommend that you wait. And they were right. They were right. And the emotion of it all, that was, going back to what was hard about the deal. That was one of the hard things, was not telling people that I really wanted to have, knowledge of it and not being able to say anything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned already, you would tell other owners to just take that first step. But do you have any other advice for people who are wanting to get this process started of, what they should do or what they should prepare themselves for?
Do the exercise on your personal finances
Yeah.
of, imagine what your life would be like if you weren't going to work, and what are the types of things you would like to do. Is it philanthropy and you want to, continue to give to nonprofits? Do you want to travel? Do you just want to, raise dogs? Whatever it is, I think you need to come up with your number. We talked about our friend Sue. Did she do a podcast on that topic?
No, so we have interviewed Sue Rogers, who used to own Oregon Hot Tubs. We've interviewed her for the article in the magazine, but we have not done a podcast or a webinar with her before, unfortunately. We should try to make that happen.
Yeah, that was and the reason I bring it up is having friends that are smarter than you, that helps too. But really figuring out, what is what do you really need to carry on the quality of life that you want to have, and figuring out your number. That's like a whole different, that's a whole different topic that you have to get that down. And then there's your business. There's the books on your business and making sure that things are really well organized and clean. And then there's the operation side of your business, and what role, do you need to add to somebody to take over to fill your shoes, if that's part of the deal. Now, I also know that there's deals done where an owner can stay on and help train their replacement, or maybe they're not ready to go cold turkey and they want to continue to play in the business. And there's all those things are possible. And I'd say with our type of deal with a private guy, we had a lot of latitude to put this together how we wanted it to look. So it was a very customized deal for what I felt Shirley and I needed, and what we wanted, what the buyers needed, what they wanted. And it took us a long time, back and forth. We started our conversation, I think, with the buyer started in like August of 2022.
Okay.
And we didn't finish until September of 2023.
Oh man. Yeah. So you guys did go back and forth a lot.
Yeah, it was a long process. We weren't,
Yeah.
we weren't pushing it through. We weren't, in a hurry. And there was a break in that time period for us. There was definitely a break in there, but yeah, it didn't happen overnight.
That's interesting. I mean, you guys must have been, I mean, both of you, buyer and seller, had to have been really committed to getting it done for it to go on that long and actually, get it across the finish line. A lot of people would be like, yeah, I don't know. I'm tired of dealing with this.
A lot of our, friends in the business that have retired, they talk about how fast, I know it can go really fast. They can be out of there in 30 days or 90 days and, and they're off. This type of deal, because, it was unique in a lot of different ways. There were a lot of decisions that had to be made along the way that made sense to everybody.
I think that's the thing too. I mean, that's intimidating and frustrating about buying and selling a business, is that you sort of want a playbook of how to do it. And while there are some clear steps that have to be taken along the way, none of them ever look the same. No two deal looks alike. There are always, nuances and things that, each particular buyer or seller need or want. And there's no one right way to do this.
But they all have one thing in common, and that is the owner had to take a step. They had to initiate it. They had to initiate it and put it out there. And
Right.
until you take that step to get the ball rolling, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. It's I mean, that's something that I have to tell myself, not about selling my business because I'm not doing that, but in general, if there's something that I'm worrying about or, fretting over and not getting done, or it's keeping me up at night, a lot of times if I just sit down and like put some pen to paper, usually it has to do with money, put some pen to paper and figure out like what the real problem is and what the real gap is and what needs to happen, suddenly I'm not worried about it anymore. And it's like, oh, well, we can do that. Oh, this isn't a big deal. It's just, it's getting over that first hump. It's like, why do I need to lay awake at night and worry about it for 3 weeks before I finally decide to deal with it? And then it's like, oh, this wasn't as big of a problem as I thought it was.
Yeah. And then the answers start becoming more apparent,
Exactly.
and options. And yeah, for all those reasons.
Yeah, it's a very human thing. We all do it. But yeah, if this is something that's keeping you up at night, just sit down and start putting some numbers on a piece of paper. Just start.
There's one other advice Shirley's reminding me of, a big part of this. This is advice from a good friend of mine, Dave Riley. told me that in the process of getting things ready to sell and the offers on the table, people are going to ask you what your plan is. You're going to retire. What's your plan? What are you going to do?
Right. Yeah.
And Dave gave me the best advice. He said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about having a plan. Everything, things will fall into place. Opportunities will come up. Don't worry about having a plan. Focus on getting it done, getting the ball across the finish line, and focus solely on getting the ball across the finish line. Don't take the pressure from your friends and your family about what are you going to do? What's your plan? Believe me, Shirley and I have been busy in our head every day
Yeah.
since. And
Yeah.
it's my answer to that, what are you going to do? My answer is this: I'm doing more of what I like and a lot less of what I don't like.
There you go. Yeah, and that is these businesses are what we do. It's our hobby, it's our baby, it's how we spend the majority of our time. And so sometimes the thought of not having that is kind of scary. But I'm not sure there aren't any business owners who've sold that I've talked to who regret it or who are bored. Everyone seems perfectly happy and busy and doing the things like you said that make them happy and the things that they like.
Yep. Yeah, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out. Things will come your way, things that you never imagined, that you don't know even exist, opportunities and things to fill your time. And yeah, we couldn't be happier that we made the decision to do it. And oh yeah, and our dog is a lot happier too.
So what does your life look like now that now that you're not running a business every day?
Well, we're in the middle of a little road trip right now, so we're fortunate to have friends at Mainly Tubs in Maine. So we're visiting them today, and this is part of probably a 6,000 or 8,000 mile road trip that we're on right now. We wrapped up a little over 9,000 mile road trip this summer, and that was on top of another road trip down to Mexico and back. So we're traveling all over and seeing friends and family that we haven't seen for decades. And that's what we've been doing for the last year.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. They're like you're living the millennial dream, Kelly. That's what we all want to do is have that van life and travel the world.
Yeah, that's what we did. We bought a van. Literally, we bought a van, and yeah, we've just been traveling around and seeing friends and family that we haven't seen for a long time.
Yeah, people don't realize the hardest part of putting together this webinar series is finding a time where the people who sold their businesses are actually in the country and available. That's been the hardest part, is trying to coordinate everybody around their travel schedules. So
Yes. Yeah, I'm familiar with them, and yeah,
yeah,
those guys. Yeah.
very, very busy, having a great time. Well, are there any final thoughts that you have on this? Anything we didn't touch on that's important? I feel like we've covered quite a bit of ground.
Yeah, I think you covered everything that I could have wanted to talk about. If if you were my friend and you were looking at selling your business and you asked me what to do next, I would tell you to start talking to somebody about getting your valuation started. What do they need? And that way they're looking at your books and they're looking at your the internal workings of your business and giving you advice on what needs to be worked on. Maybe you're not ready now and you're thinking maybe it's a year or 2 years from now. Get somebody to look in your books now and tell you what you need to work on over the next 12 or 18 months to get it in order. But you got to take that step to talk to somebody and get that information to them so that they can take a look inside of your business and tell you what you need to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great message. If you guys are interested in hearing any more about Kelly's story, I mean, we've written about it in the magazine. We've had him on the podcast in the very early days of the podcast. So there's a lot of information on the Spa Retailer website about Kelly. Your life is just we got the whole journey out there for everybody to learn about.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Well,
it's been a great ride in the hot tub business. Who'd have known? Who'd have known?
Exactly. Who would have known? Well, Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the webinar today. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining us. And if you weren't able to join live, we'll be getting this out to you probably tomorrow. So thank you so much, everybody. You have a great day.